name all of you. I'm going to overshoot the time, but if this session has created some curiosity for you, then these are some suggested reads for all of you.
Yes.
So Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman, The Invisible Gorilla, and The Systems Thinking. So these are some suggested reads. With this, I think my time, the session also concludes right here. I'm thankful for your very active and involved participation, everybody. So once again, thank you very much. Jai Hind. And I'll hand it back over to my team, Tanvi or Shikha, as you are.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Ravi. That was quite an engaging and impactful session for sure. Gentlemen, we'll be going for a 10 minutes break and a tea break. You can have a short tea and coffee break. We'll resume at 4:27.
Thanks.
Enjoy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you so much.
Clear, clear, clear.
करेक्ट। नहीं तो फीडबैक भी हम लोग शायद ठीक से नहीं दे रहे होंगे। लर्निंग नथिंग, नॉट ग्रास्पिंग। हाँ, वो हमारे में से ही है। अरे हमारे वाले ही है, वो जो उतना ही लिखना है, जितना जरूरत है उतना ही लिखेगा।
Welcome back, everybody. I hope all of you are back from the tea break.
Hari is coming at what time?
He's joined. You can start. He's there. I can start.
Now we'll have again one session from Lieutenant General Hari Mohan Iyer, Commandant School of Artillery, about strategic thinking. Over to General Hari.
Thank you, Colonel Sunil, and I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you're audible, sir.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We come back to the second session that I have been entrusted to speak on. Go next, please. Yeah. I once again request on these three disclaimers, Chatham House rules, my personal views, and again, I am a practitioner and not an expert. Go next, please. So before I join up with the topic of strategic thinking, as per the scope, I'll be discussing India's operating environment in a broad sense of term and try and fit in where strategic thinking fits in into this overall architecture. Next, please. Ladies and gentlemen, India as it stands is a growing nation, and any growing economy is vulnerable to conflict from all sides, both internal and external. And therefore, it needs to apply all instruments of national power in order to achieve its aims and priorities. Therefore, it is necessary that we need to understand the perspective, policy, objectives, and priorities to be able to understand what is the strategic thought process as far as India is concerned. Go next, please. So when we look at the overall architecture of the world, there is an increased strain on access to global commons. When I say global commons, it could be anything, right from the oceans, Antarctica, Arctic, the space, climate, and you can keep carrying on and on and on this. As more and more people join up to draw from this global common, there is going to be a greater need for increased cooperation with similar-minded nations. I would also add over here that as the strain grows on the global commons, there is likelihood of more conflicts, both internally and around us. Go next, please. So when I look at conflict, the graph which I've projected here indicates two things. The x-axis shows the intensity and the y-axis shows the probability. So where intensity and probability both are on the extreme ends, we are looking at a major war. And I don't see any of these happening in the current scheme of things. Even the 2-year-old Russian-Ukrainian conflict, by and large, fits in somewhere between hybrid and limited conventional war. Gray zone and its importance has increased in the last decade or so, and it is likely to extend larger swath of space in the coming years. And it is in this area where maximum amount of conflicts are likely to happen in the near future. When I say the type of conflicts we are looking at, it starts from hybrid threats to hybrid warfare. If that could be a kind of end of spectrum of warfare thought, we need to see how the nations react to this, and primarily looking at those who are going to be part of these conflicts that are non-state actors and individuals, which will be the main aspects as far as participants in such a conflict. Go next. And same time, the increased cyber threat, race for space, and disruptive technology creates a new dynamic as far as war is concerned. Today, cyber threat is a real danger, and it is looming on our heads. We have been hearing of cyber attacks at all levels, and even in the recently concluded G20 summit, it was reported that the website was subjected to cyber attack. Social media is yet another paradigm that is showing new dynamics as far as warfare is concerned. The best example which I can share is a couple of pictures of the Prime Minister sitting at a beach in Lakshadweep triggered a kind of an international situation wherein a nation was shown as likely to boycott another nation in terms of all its activities. No words were spoken, nothing was enunciated as an official line, but social media just spun that whole topic away from what it was possibly originated at. And it's a dangerous tool. And the messages going viral on social media can be exploited by non-state actors to create a situation or an environment that subsequently blows up into a conflict. Today morning, somebody asked me a question about Eastern Ladakh crisis. I must say that social media was overhyped, or in fact hyperactive during the Eastern Ladakh crisis. And many people who had no idea about what was happening and where it was happening were posting as if they knew the inside outs of every action that was taking place in those areas. So social media will be a major player in my mind in the future battle space. Though there is a treaty to say that weaponizing of space is forbidden, by and large, space has become a new battle space. Elon Musk's Starlink series of satellites have been a major contributor to war resources in the Ukraine. And they have been the ones that have been used, that are being used by the HIMARS to target Russian assets deep inside Russia. So therefore, as technology grows, space is the next frontier which is likely to get weaponized. And once that happens, the dynamics of battlefield is also likely to change. Disruptive technologies are in vogue and are still coming in. Each of them have its own dynamics and has a subject by itself. I would goad each one of you to be current in these issues that I am flagging today, because these are the challenges which are going to be faced by the leaders of tomorrow. artificial intelligence and cloning are the ones which are threatening us today. Today, people are willing to let their minds be outsourced to a machine to give decisions. And once the machines take over, we know what kind of decisions are likely. And therefore, we need to be abreast with these technologies, which are going to have a major say in the dynamics of warfare in the future. Go next, please. Okay. Coming on to certain areas closer home, in the morning I had given you a larger span of a global scan, and I had said that I will restrict the neighborhood for the evening. So I'll start with the Indo-Pacific, which in the last 2 to 3 decades has become the new theater for opportunity. And the reason why Indo-Pacific has become so important is because it constitutes the major part of trade in the world as it stands today and in the foreseeable future. The World Wars I and II were fought in the Atlantic region. The entire power shift has happened towards Central Asia, and if at all a conflict of the nature of World War is likely to happen in the future, I foresee it happening in the Indo-Pacific more than anywhere else. And therefore, in the Indo-Pacific, there are multiple issues that come up, primarily with China being a major player which wants to dominate this space. US, India, Australia, and Japan are players who want to counter this. And that is why the formation of Quad, which has been in the formation for the last 10 to 12 years. We have been partners in Quad, and we do look at maritime domain and awareness and deployment as part of a larger forum to protect our interests in the Indo-Pacific. What you see on the slide here, all the red dots are the Chinese bases which are there in the Indian Ocean region. The blue dots indicate Indian interests and our so-called bases, and the green dots indicate the presence of the Americans in the same region. So if you can add it all together, this gives a very lucrative space for a protracted battle in the future. And therefore, it is a theater of opportunity as one looks at. Go next, please. In this context, I would like to talk about India-China. We have been in conflict for the last 5 decades or so. We have had a very serious war in 1962, something which pains us even today. And in the last 10 to 20 years, India's growth has always been counted at China's expense, which means that Chinese are feeling the brunt of Indian growth. And this competition in growth is likely to result in a conflict. Whereas China is having a larger presence in the world order, India is leveraging soft power and is also trying to find a place in the decision-making syndrome of the world. We are trying to maintain balance in all 4 spheres of decision-making, and as part of Quad, we can give a very good counter to the Chinese presence in this theater of opportunity. And therefore, in the last 5 years and in the next future 5 to 10 years, the growth of Quad and its application in this region will be an interesting focus for all of us to look at. Go next, please. Indo-US ties accordingly has grown, especially in the last 2 decades. In the last 10 years, we have had repeated 2+2 dialogues wherein the foreign and defense ministers and the secretaries have been participating in various forums as an individual independent body and meeting, and they have been creating a large amount of arrangements and agreements which are giving an indication of close partnership. The four marked agreements have major space to play in any future conflict in the Indian Ocean region. When you look at the United States, we can say that we are traditional partners. We have common interests, especially in the counter-terrorism sphere. We have indicated our national interests and at times have even stood for our interests against the American points of view. The best example could be our refusal to be drawn into a side during the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. We believe in partners being partners for peace and harmony. Both nations have a same or similar strategic orientation, and we want to be part of the visible world bodies. And therefore, I look at a more stronger Indo-US ties in the coming years, both in economic and military sphere. Again, like I said, these are my personal opinions as I read the Indo-US agreements as it's been seen over the last 2 to 3 decades. Go next, please. This vision of India at 2047 has been enunciated by the Prime Minister. We're looking at a developed nation and have started working towards it. The point to note is the moment the development goes beyond a particular level, it is going to attract huge amount of confrontation, especially from those who feel left out. And therefore, it is need of the hour that the security agencies at all levels are acting in coordination to ensure that these confrontations are managed at their respective levels. Go next, please. So if I look at what is likely in the coming year, the Black Swan events, we spoke in the morning, the two major wars that are in vogue today, both in the Middle East and in the Eastern Europe, are likely to continue through this summer because of the reasons I mentioned in the morning. Primarily, the presidential elections in the United States will have stakes in both these events, and they are likely to stay ripe and warm at least during the coming year. And while this happens, any advance by the United States in the Indo-Pacific is going to push it towards a perennial flashpoint. It could happen in the South China Sea, it could happen in the Taiwan Straits, it could happen in the Indian Ocean region in our areas of interest. But we should be live and ready for any such events in the coming year. As Russia keeps getting strangulated in the world order, it is likely to become closer to the other power in the making, that is China. So should Sino-Russian strategic partnership reach a particular level and counters the US calculations, it will become difficult for India to choose between the two, because you have an adversary and a very old friend at one side and an untested friend on the other side. It's a very difficult call, and I cannot predict how this particular aspect is going to open out during the year. So when you come to the bottom of the slide, Indo-China relations are likely to remain uneasy, if not confrontationist, during the year. And once that happens, due to the strife in Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Pakistan, India's neighborhood first policy is likely to face a lot of pressure. Especially if you recollect last year when Sri Lanka was in an economic turmoil and India was the first responder to it, it created a counter from China towards Pakistan. So therefore, we need to keep our options open in the neighborhood first policy and react based on the situation as it arrives. I mentioned earlier also, both India and US are in an election year. It happened 2 decades ago. It's occurring again. Both have internal politics to look at, and therefore there could be some amount of restraint in decision making, at least at the strategic levels. As far as our relations with Russia is concerned, there is a need to relook at these relations. That's again my point of view, and we may require to diversify beyond just military relations to other aspects of Indo-Russian cooperation. I mentioned about the North-South divide in the morning, and I stay by it that issues like climate control, maritime security, etc., are going to come under heavy pressure in the coming years, primarily because when the North gets strangulated, they try to find an easier way out. Go next, please. So let's look at the tenets of national strategy, security strategy as it stands. And these are straight from what is available in the open source, and it's not anything of my creation. So I'll just lay it out for you. India believes in having a rightful place in global affairs, wants a secure neighborhood. It wants resolution of internal conflicts. India believes in protecting its own people, both at home and abroad, and also believes in strengthening its capabilities. These have been enunciated in clear to all nations. Go next. So when we put a strategic slant, what is going to happen is increased great power rivalry between nations which are competing with us. There will be reduction in multinationalism, and nationalist jingoism is likely to be predominant. The sectarian violence in the Middle East and North African nations are likely to have some effect on the manner in which we see global affairs. We desire to have a global role for India and place in international decision-making structures, and the role of India being a permanent member in the UN Security Council stays paramount in our diplomatic efforts. India is looking for bilateral engagements based on national interests and global geopolitical realities. So these are all enunciated very clearly in the national security strategy. Go next, please. So let's see what they say about the various nations that are involved. India wants to support Afghanistan, both led and owned and also in the peace process, but we do not want to be seen as having a direct engagement with the Taliban. As far as Pakistan goes, we want to have a long-term strategy, dialogue based on visible, viable results, and engagement on nuclear issues. We want to have a clearly enunciated core interest discussion with China, push for defining the line of actual control, create a framework for naval engagements because there's an increased presence of Chinese boats and ships in the Indian Ocean region, and try and strengthen areas of cooperation as part of various forums which India and China are both part of, namely the Shanghai Council Organization, or the SCO, and of course the BRICS, where both of us are in the same league. About the other neighborhood nations, India wants to have enhanced engagement and strengthened relationship even up to the ASEAN. India, incidentally, is a member of, or the participating member of all ASEAN discussions. In the Indian Ocean region, India wants to strengthen regional maritime cooperation, have better coordination for disaster relief, and code for unalerted encounters at sea, primarily due to increased threat of piracy, at least towards the western portion of the IOR. Go next. Coming over to internal conflicts, we look at interagency task force and countering the extremist narrative as far as transnational terrorism is concerned. For state-wise, if one looks at J&K, by and large, appears to have resolved to a large extent. And once the political system gets stabilized, I look at J&K to be in a much better situation than what we have seen for the last 3 to 4 decades. And therefore, our nation strategy says that we want to tackle both transnational and internal dimensions together, be empathetic towards the local population. There needs to be a clearly defined political objective and well-crafted information campaign. As regards Northeast, greater focus towards development and integration, resolution of Naga and other insurgencies in that area. I believe the Assam insurgency is almost resolved with the laying down of arms by the Alpha, and similar activities are likely to happen in other northeastern states. The National NRC and the Citizen Amendment Act that have been enunciated are likely to get promulgated during the coming years. As far as the left-wing extremism, because of some fantastic work by the Central Armed Police Forces of the country, including the BSF, a large portion of this problem has been resolved, and this has been reduced to a very, very small corridor between Maharashtra, Telangana, and Odisha. And I do look at this particular problem getting resolved or marginalized even more in the coming years. And as a nation, the point which has been laid out is to address the genuine problems of Adivasis and have a unified approach towards capability development of forces. Go next. So when you look at what are the national security strategy tenets and protecting our people, strengthening our capabilities. So we want people to be protected from global risks, climate change, demographic pressures and inequality, technology disruption, cyber threats, economic security, energy security. I think I have spoken of almost everything in the earlier part of my presentation. And we'll do this by securing land and maritime border, both internally and externally, strengthen military capability, indigenize our defense production, transformation in police, intelligence, cyber, nuclear, and space domains being dominated, and of course, having strategic communication to all concerned people. Go next. With this as an overview, I come to the talk of the day, that is, what is strategic thinking? And here I would like to start by using the word, what is strategy? Because generally, whenever the word strategic thinking or strategic planning is talked about, people think that these are events at national and above levels. Well, strategy can start with as low as a platoon level. So therefore, we need to understand what is strategy and what is strategic. The definitions are given in the green on top, and what it implies have been written in the blue portion below. May I request you all to read it, because these are overused and misunderstood terms at all levels. And therefore, what I mean to say is that each and every leader at each and every level needs to have a degree of strategic thinking incubated in himself. And that is why I goad all of you who are at DIG levels and equivalent to try and inculcate amongst yourself and your commands to start thinking strategically. Go next. Now the picture here is an example, and I would like you all to have a look at it, because here are some very, very well-known companies in the world. Whenever a person used to talk of photography, he used to talk of Kodak. But where is the company called Kodak today? Ask today's generation, they won't know. When you used to talk of refrigeration and air conditioners, people used to say Toshiba. Where is this company today? Ask today's generation, they won't know. America Online was pioneer in internet communications. But today it's an unknown company. Yahoo was another pioneers, had great opportunities, but both of them applied poor strategies and have got obliterated. BlackBerry was supposed to be the ultimate as far as mobile communications are concerned. But they also adopted a wrong strategy and lost out to Apple and Android. So much so that BlackBerry tried to come back into the system using an Android technology and failed again. Same is the case with Nokia, which was so-called leader in mobile communications, is nowhere in the horizon today. And of course, Motorola was the leader in all types of communication, but today is a Chinese company trying to find third degree or third level of smartphones in markets. These examples actually indicate adoption of poor strategy and poor strategic thinking by members of these companies. Next. There are certain terminologies which you would have heard repeatedly, possibly some or maybe more than some in your respective organizations. As I look at it, these are retarders of strategic thinking. If we adopt these kind of terminologies as our routine, we cannot progress and to think strategically. And as I mentioned it in the morning, it will never allow you to think out of the box. You'll continue to stay within the box and repeat the plans and procedures that were already in vogue. Go next. So let's look at what are the barriers of strategic thinking inside security forces, and it includes every person in uniform. We are very happy with our day-to-day running of our organization. From the morning PT till the evening retreat, almost every organization is very happy doing what has been laid down in the routine and in our SOPs. The second aspect is the time of gestation of any new program takes a long time, often more than the incumbent's tenure. But the third point is what actually starts troubling us. When we come to a situation, we want to finish everything during our tenure. And therefore, we start thinking chota. Choti soch. And of course, this I'm sure people on the other side will be well aware. The superiors press for immediate results. If the work requires 3 days, you say, nahi, nahi, sab aaj hi kar do usko. So when we apply this kind of a logic, we'll end up substandard and not thinking strategically. And last point is zone of comfort. We are very happy to stay within the box. As long as we are within the box, we say there is no error. Chalta hai attitude. Nothing will go wrong. And therefore, we do not think strategically. And it has an overall effect in the manner in which our organizations go ahead. Go next. So what is strategic thinking? Though Wikipedia and other things have given out some definitions which are more corporate in nature, for people in uniform, what is written in the lower half of the slide is applicable. Here I would stress on the word systematic assessment of the overall situation, including capabilities and intentions of both friendly and adversary forces in a broader geopolitical context. If you do this, this is what strategic thinking is all about. And therefore, it does not differentiate between a Raksha Mantri and a platoon commander. Both have to think strategically within their own domains. And that is why I want to stress on this fact that strategic thinking doesn't mean that you have to think at national level. You need to develop the art of strategic thinking at the level in which you are operating and the level you are likely to operate in the near future. And if this chain continues from bottom upwards over a period of time, we will develop strategically thinking leaders in our organization. And that should be what we should be aiming at in our current profile wherever we are. Go next, please. So why is it needed? There's a very famous model called the Leavitt-Diamond model. I'll try and elaborate this. Any organization, can you go one back, please? Yeah. Any organization is created primarily when there is a need felt for that organization. If borders had to be managed, border security force was created. So there was a need, an organization was created which had people, structure, technology, and tasks. Now this organization is fed with the resources to produce a degree of output on the other side. The faster the output comes, the better is the efficiency of this organization. Now imagine this organization with some external forces that act on it, which are environmental forces, because they are operating in a dynamic environment. Could be political, legal, social, economic, technology, military, anything. When they put pressure on this, next. When they put pressure on this organization, we reach what kind of outcome we are able to produce as part of this organization. As long as the outcome corroborates the need that is felt by the organization is deemed as effective. Next also. So it will stay relevant in the future environment if it satisfied the felt need. And therefore, in order to ensure that the organization stays relevant, there is a need to have clarity of vision of future environment so that we are able to readjust our organization to be able to be effective in a future scenario. This is the overall gambit that I'm talking about. Go next. So therefore, when people say strategic thinking is only needed at national level, etc., I say no, we need it at all levels. So let's look at this organogram that I have laid out for you. The first one are the worst ones. Leaders who wait for orders, they're likely to lose initiative and lose opportunities. You'll end up being on the losing side. We don't want to go there. The second set of leaders are those who act when a situation is painted to them. Some of them, in their own enthusiasm, overstep. And when they do that, they jeopardize the mission and cause casualties. No, we don't want that kind of people also. So we want people who can retain and seize the initiative and further the commander's intent by having a clarity of mission and aim, being aware of the resource availability and stretch within the available resources, be aware of the constraints and restraints that are likely to be put on them, and thereby achieve success. So when I put it all together, it tells me that if you want to have all of this, you need to be thinking strategically. And therefore, in order to be thinking strategically, you need to develop strategic thinking skills, leadership development programs, and of course, cross-domain training. I'll be dwelling upon this a little more in a later part. Go next, please. So strategic thinking in military, and this is coming from well within my organization, it comes by having clearly defined goals, assessment of resources vis-a-vis the goals being defined, carrying out a risk assessment, both in battlefield, political and diplomatic era, and also mitigate the risk by taking suitable action at this level. Today morning, somebody asked me a question regarding consensus generation. And that is where I said I will bring it out in the evening. Adaptability is yet another important facet. You may plan a line of action, but should there be a requirement to modify it, you should be adaptable. And that is one very important facet of a good leader. Next comes coordination and integration. Ganesh, can you take this call? Long-term vision and making an informed decision by using all available tools like information and intelligence utilization. So if all of this is carried out correctly, a decision which is made is a balanced strategic decision. And that is what we all aim to achieve. Whether we reach it or not are parameters which are beyond, definition. I can't say that you do all this and you'll get a strategic decision. But by and large, if somebody adapts to these steps, the overall decision that will come out is likely to be a balanced strategic decision. Go next. So to develop strategic thinking, there are 4 steps that are being aligned. You need to know yourself. You need to understand your organization's strategy. You need to develop bigger picture perspective. And you need to align your decisions with strategic objectives. We will discuss each of them a little in detail a little later. Go next. So in the morning, we had shown you a loop. Then I was talking about, what was it? Competencies and skill sets. So I was talking about the learning loop. So this question you need to ask yourself, amongst these 6 steps, which is the weakest amongst it as far as you are concerned? And this is an individual exercise. You need to rate them in the order of priority. And once you do that, the lowest one will indicate the kind of person you are. Let's say if you rate decision as number 6, then you are likely to be indecisive in a particular situation. Just because I have said this, please don't start rating decide as number 1. You will end up with giving a wrong result for yourself. So I'll request all of you to look at yourself in the mirror and identify what kind of a person you are. That will help you choose a team to ensure that the person you and your team are making up for wherever you are deficient. Therefore, this is a very good exercise. I'll request all of you to carry it out in your own spare time. Go next, please. So if I was to graph agility and consistency and put it into 4 quadrants, I don't want any of us to be in the first quadrant where agility is low and consistency is also low, which will result in an unreliable and uninspired person, which will not be something your command is looking at. What your command wants is somebody with high consistency and high agility, which goes into the strategic space. Now, these kind of people are far and few. Majority of us fall in the parameters of rigid and unfocused. We may not be in the extreme ends of this quadrant, but we may find ourselves somewhere in the middle. So we need to identify which part of the quadrant we are, what is our deficiencies, and try and get a team member which compensates for it. For example, the leader, if a leader is rigid and if his second in command is unfocused, both together will make a good strategic team. It's just an example. You'll have to find your team accordingly. Go next. So in order to understand strategic thinking, there's a need to understand the organization strategy. So you need to understand what your higher commander strategic objectives are. From there, you can draw your own organization strategic objectives, which will thereafter result in your department or establishment's objective. And within that, you have to identify what is your role, because your role will define as to what your establishment is going to do, what your organization is going to do, and how is it going to fit into the overall structure of the higher commander's strategy. So this particular series of steps have to be seen top to bottom and then bottom to up. Whichever way you look at it, the ultimate aim is to ensure that your higher commander's strategic objective is met by you and your team. And therefore, it is important to look at the graph which I showed you before, select your team accordingly, assign roles to each person, and try and meet the higher commander's objective. That is an essential aspect of strategic thinking. Next. This particular graph talks about what we say as zoom in and zoom out. The first two boxes are deciding the organizational issues. You need to send signals from within your own organization. People, processes, operations, strategy. Zoom into it and zoom out to see what are the trends outside this organization. This will give you a very interesting input about how your organization is organized for the particular role that has been defined for it. Similarly, you need to look at what are the insights of your organization and look at it from outside inwards. That will tell you what its overall capabilities are. So structure and capability looked at through zoom in and zoom out will give you the big picture perspective as far as the organization is concerned. Go next. This, I think, is my last slide, or last but one, I guess. So therefore, when you nurture strategic thinking in security forces, the first paradigm is to develop leadership capabilities at all levels. It can come by training programs, courses, scenario building, geopolitical analysis, etc. Try and nurture these in your commands. Mentorship, coaching, helping people to start thinking strategically is a very important aspect. Next is educational incentives. Make them do courses, make them do studies, make them read, and try and promote critical thinking amongst your command. Very important aspect. And I mentioned it in the morning, any problem you should look at why is this problem there, and why not this problem can be solved this particular manner. It's a very important element of making you a good leader. The next is, of course, carry out as many exercises and simulations as you can. Starts at the lowest level of a platoon or a section and can go up to any level. It will be the scope of that particular element will be the kind of tasks that can be assigned to it, and see how it performs in that particular scenario. Cross-domain training will take you to understand what is the external aspects, whether it is training from within CAPF, training with the army. This is something which will be operational specific for each one of you. I will leave it to your own intelligence to see where you fit into this. And finally, you must, in the future world, integrate technology and simulate virtual reality to aspects of decision making. These are important facets, and once you hone on to all of these skills, you will find yourself becoming a better leader. Next. With this, I come to the end of my talk today. I've taken about 45 minutes to try to put across a holistic thought process of what India is facing in the current and immediate future environment, where we should fit in as far as our strategic thoughts are concerned, and how we can hone the skills of strategic thinking and strategic learning. I have tried to encompass all of this in the last 45 minutes or so. I guess I am done. I am open to questions. So I guess we had a long day. So therefore, either I have been very communicative or I think I have gone over everybody's head. I hope I was the former and have been able to put across some issues that were mandated to me in this guest lecture. Thank you very much for being a very good audience. I wish we had spoken in person in a single room. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant General Hari Mohan, sir. Thank you so much. And this was quite an enriching session on strategic thinking, understanding border security and strategic planning. Our participants as well as us have learned a lot, and I hope that this will help the participants here to address the current and future challenges, ensuring national security while balancing other important considerations. So, thank you so much, sir, for your time. And participants, with this, we come to the end of the first day. And we have reflected on some very, very extensively enriching sessions, starting from exploring the legacy of leadership to navigating the complexities of non-linear environments to envisioning the big picture and honing our strategic thinking with a sense of empowerment and collective purpose. I hope that tomorrow you will participate with similar zeal and enthusiasm as we have a similar set of sessions lined up for you with both our faculty, coaches, and expert speakers. Hope you have a great day, sir. Tomorrow we will start at 9:15 with a voluntary meditation session. Thank you and Jai Hind. We log out for the day. Thank you. So I shall be sharing a feedback link on your WhatsApp group. I request you to please share your feedback as well with us. It's very important. Thank you so much. Thank you.
To you, sir, good evening.
जय हिंद।
मैं क्या सर, बड़े दिनों बाद आपके इतने स्मार्ट और सुशील अफसर के